Mysticism by Evelyn Underhill, 1910. Part 1. The Mystic Fact. 1. The Point of Departure. The most highly developed branches of the human family have in common one peculiar characteristic. They tend to produce, sporadically it's true, and often in the teeth of adverse external circumstances, a curious and definite type of personality, a type which refuses to be satisfied with that which other men call experience and is inclined, in the words of its enemies, to deny the world in order that it might find reality. We meet these persons in the East and the West, in the ancient, medieval, and modern worlds. Their one passion appears to be the prosecution of a certain spiritual and intangible quest, the finding of a way out or a way back to some desirable state in which alone they can satisfy their cravings for absolute truth. This quest, for them, has constituted the whole meaning of life. They've made for it, without effort, sacrifices which have appeared enormous to other men, and it is an indirect testimony to its objective actuality that whatever the place or period in which they have arisen, their aims, doctrines, and methods have been substantially the same. Their experience, therefore, forms a body of evidence curiously self-consistent and often mutually explanatory, which must be taken into account before we can add up the sum of these energies and potentialities of the human spirit, or reasonably speculate on its relations to the unknown world which lies outside the boundaries of sense. All men, at one time or another, have fallen in love with the veiled Isis, whom they call truth. With most, this has been a passing passion. They have early seen its hopelessness and turned to more practical things, but others remain all their lives the devout lovers of reality, though the manner of their love, the vision which they make to themselves of the beloved object, varies enormously. Some see truth as Dante saw Beatrice, an adorable yet intangible figure found in the world yet revealing the next. To others she seems rather an evil, but an irresistible enchantress, enticing, demanding payment and betraying her lover at the last. Some have seen her in a test tube, and some in a poet's dream, some before the altar, others in the slime. The extreme pragmatists have even sought her in the kitchen, declaring that she may best be recognized by her utility. Last stage of all, the philosophic skeptic has comforted an unsuccessful courtship by assuring himself that his mistress is not really there. Under whatsoever symbols they have objectified their quest, none of these seekers have ever been able to assure the world that they have found, seen face to face, the reality behind the veil. But if we may trust the reports of the mystics, and they are reports given with a strange accent of certainty and good faith, they have succeeded where all the others have failed in establishing immediate communication between the spirit of man, entangled as they declare among material things, and that only reality, that immaterial and final being, which some philosophers call the Absolute, and most theologians call God. This, they say, and here many who are not mystics agree with them, is the hidden truth, which is the object of man's cravings, the only satisfying goal of his quest. Hence, they should claim from us the same attention that we give to other explorers of countries in which we were not competent to adventure ourselves, for the mystics are the pioneers of the spiritual world, and we have no right to deny validity to their discoveries merely because we lack the opportunity or the courage necessary to those who would prosecute such explorations for themselves. It's the object of this book to attempt a description, and also, though this is needless for those who read that description in good faith, a justification of these experiences and the conclusions which have been drawn from them. So remote, however, are these matters from our ordinary habits of thought that their investigation entails, in those who would attempt to understand them, a definite preparation, a purging of the intellect. As with those who came of old to the mysteries, purification is here the gate of knowledge. We must come to this encounter with minds cleansed of prejudice and convention, must deliberately break with our inveterate habit of taking the visible world for granted, our lazy assumption that somehow science is real and metaphysics is not. We must pull down our own card houses, descend, as the mystics would say, into our nothingness, and examine for ourselves the foundations of all possible human experience before we're in a position to criticize the buildings of the visionaries, the poets, and the saints. We must not talk of the unreal world of these dreamers until we have discovered, if we can, a real world with which it may be compared. Such a criticism of reality is, of course, the business of philosophy. I need hardly say that this book is not written by a philosopher, nor is it addressed to students of that imperial science. Nevertheless, amateurs though we be, we cannot reach our starting point without trespassing to some extent on philosophic ground. That ground covers the whole area of first principles, and it's to first principles that we must go if we would understand the true significance of the mystic type. Let us then begin at the beginning and remind ourselves of a few of the trite and primary facts which all practical persons agree to ignore. That beginning for human thought is, of course, I, the ego, the self-conscious subject which is writing this book, or the other self-conscious subject which is reading it, and which declares in the teeth of all arguments, I am. Here is a point as to which we all feel quite sure. No metaphysician has yet shaken the ordinary individual's belief in his own existence. The uncertainties only begin for most of us when we ask, what else is? To this I, this conscious self, imprisoned in the body like an oyster in his shell, come, as we know, a constant stream of messages and experiences, and chief among these are the stimulation of the tactile nerves, whose result we call touch, the vibrations taken up by the optic nerve, which we call light, and those taken up by the ear and perceived as sounds. What do these experiences mean? The first answer of the unsophisticated self is that they indicate the nature of the external world. It is to the evidence of the senses that she turns when she's asked what the world is like. From the messages received through those senses, which pour on in her, whether she will or no, battering upon her gateways at every instant and from every side, she constructs that sense world, which is the real and solid world of normal men. As the impressions come in, or rather, those interpretations of the original impressions which her nervous system supplies, she pounces on them, much as players in the spelling game pounce on the separate letters dealt out to them. She sorts, accepts, rejects, combines, and then triumphantly produces from them a concept, which is, she says, the external world. With an enviable and amazing simplicity, she attributes her own sensations to the unknown universe. The stars, she says, are bright. The grass is green. For her, as for the philosopher Hume, reality consists in impressions and ideas. It's immediately apparent, however, that this sense world, this seemingly real external universe, though it may be useful and valid in other respects, cannot be the external world, but it's only the self's projected picture of it. It's a work of art, not a scientific fact. And while it may well possess the profound significance proper to great works of art, it's dangerous if treated as a subject of analysis. Very slight investigation shows that it's a picture whose relation to reality is at best symbolic and approximate, and which would have no meaning for selves whose senses or channels of communication happen to be arranged upon a different plan. The evidence of the senses, then, cannot be accepted as evidence of the nature of ultimate reality. Useful servants, they're dangerous guides. Nor can their testimony disconcert those seekers whose reports they appear to contradict. The conscious self sits, so to speak, at the receiving end of a telegraph wire. On any other theory than that of mysticism, it is her one channel of communication with the hypothetical external world. The receiving instrument registers certain messages she does not know, and, so long as she remains dependent upon that instrument, never can know the object, the reality, at the other end of the wire, by which those messages are sent. Neither can the messages truly disclose the nature of that object, but she is justified on the whole in accepting them as evidence that something exists beyond herself and her receiving instrument. It's obvious that the structural peculiarities of the telegraphic instrument will have exerted a modifying effect upon the message. That which is conveyed as a dash and dot, color and shape, may have been received in a very different form. Therefore, this message, though it may, in a partial sense, be relevant to the supposed reality at the other end, can never be adequate to it. There will be a fine vibration which it fails to take up, others which it confuses together. Hence, a portion of the message is always lost, or, in other language, there are aspects of the world which we can never know. The sphere of our possible knowledge is thus strictly conditioned by the limits of our own personality. On this basis, not the ends of the earth, but the external termini of our own sensory nerves are the termini of our explanations, and to know oneself is really to know one's universe. We're locked up with our receiving instruments. We can't get up and walk away in the hope of seeing whither the lines lead. Eckhart's words are still final for us. Quote, "The soul can only approach created things by the voluntary reception of images." End quote. Did some mischievous demiurge choose to tickle our sensory apparatus in this new way? We should receive by this act a new universe.